Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have some pictures of old posters, but I don't have any actual posters. I mean, I could make my own from the picture, but it's
Photos.
not the same though. Because people said there was a drive-in in Alton. I says, yeah, there was.
I have a poster of Stone's first concert in the United States,
Oh, wow.
which, believe it or not, was in some place called the Lynn Arena. Mass.
Yeah.
Think about what happened with the Stones, how they got to having the Los Angeles Garden and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then Mass, man, is about as bad.
The city of sin.
They'll go out the way you came in. I grew up the next town over. I was in Swampscott.
Oh, yeah.
I was born in Salem, so,
Did you grow up in Stones?
Yeah.
I grew up in Beatty.
okay,
I'm gonna start recording.
okay, we'll shut up.
Got paperwork.
He gave it all away.
So you can borrow. You can borrow.
You have another one by chance?
I do if Frank doesn't work. How good to go.
I picked one up yesterday and then I left it sitting on my desk at home. Thank
Look
you.
at that.
Okay, you all set? I'll call the zoning amendment committee meeting to order at 5:06 on the 21st of August. There is one change to the agenda that I would like to add to it, election of officers. We didn't do that. It's on there?
It's on there.
So,
So we got to do approval of agenda.
Oh, I was looking and the thing's not up in the big plan. Okay, approval of agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda, but I would like to note that Mr. Shea is filling in for Mr. Bonapane as the Board of Selectmen representative.
Okay.
For the record.
In zoning? I mean, anybody from there?
Yes, so it would be well, because you're sit on planning, but you're not here from planning. So it's Frank and Mark are the ZBA representatives, but
Okay.
Frank is not here tonight.
So we have been very unlucky with the zoning members showing up.
I can leave if you'd rather.
No. No.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Election of officers.
All right. I nominate you.
Oh,
Thank you.
I was kind of hoping to punt it off onto somebody else. Yeah, it's better that way. He's not here. Okay, we'll make Frank vice chairman. How's that sound?
All right.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Scott is the chairman and Frank is the vice chairman. Okay, new business.
So our new business really is our old business now at this point.
Yeah.
'Cause we need to start from square one.
Should we move right into Tara so we could
I
maybe
think
get her to
so.
move
Yeah, and
along?
then we can discuss sort of all the other
Yeah.
stuff and determine what you want to do.
So
Sure.
if you could set Tara up for what she needs to, where she's going on this and hello, Tara.
I thought I was set up.
Tara, do you need to share your screen at all?
No, I think you guys have the handouts in your packet.
Okay,
So, yeah, so I have to hop on to another meeting at about at 6, so it'd be great if I could hop out of yours at 5 or 10 of. We've been stuck on a draft of a flexible zoning ordinance, and I looked at the date and we've been stuck on it one day short of a year. As the draft is stated August 22nd, 2022. So to try to help move us along, I made this, if you could all be looking at the 1-page discussion guide with the 10 questions on it. My thought was, however far we can get through those questions, I'll update that draft. And we'll meet about the draft. We already set up another date for September 11th. We agreed that we'd meet that date to kind of chew through the next draft. But so you have 40 minutes to try to tell me what to do to it using these questions. So so the first question was kind of a basic one of, if you allowed this flexible zoning, do you want to allow it in every zoning district or just certain ones?
Should we try to toss out some thoughts at this point in time on these as we go by, so at least we can?
Yeah, that's what I need you to do tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so what's everybody's thoughts about the flexible zoning? Should it be allowed in all or only certain ones?
What flexible zoning would be.
The flexible zoning is, we're wording towards the cabin colony. I gotta be careful of how
Page of that
how I pick the words.
Does he have, Jessica,
there.
does he have the
Here,
draft in
left.
his packet?
Yes, he does. He should have it.
So that would answer his question.
Yeah.
Well, it's, it goes by so many different names, but cluster housing and trying to get as many dwelling units kind of squeezed in tight, with still preserving land as well.
So you're saying flexible zoning means cluster house.
No, not just,
No,
you don't, that's not a word we really want to use.
Yeah, I see.
cluster is,
Is it more, if you allow me to interject, is it more like a high density, type of condition to a specific zone to allow for more units within a specific set of dimensional regulations,
maybe that's where we would talk about a density bonus, but we haven't quite got there yet. The first question really is whether, we've avoided the term cluster because that makes people envision a certain type of development that may not be necessarily the outcome if you allow some flexibility in lot sizing. I called it, when I wrote the model for the state, lot size averaging, but that didn't really take off. That turned out not to be catchy at all. So we've just kind of gone with flexible zoning for
Yeah,
this. But
I forget what we called it the last time we.
flexible
mentioned
zoning.
That arena, and we got our eyes blackened pretty good.
Oh, yeah, you called it cluster, I think. So we stuck with flexible zoning this time just to shake that bad history, but it's all different forms of the same thing.
But the
Allow flexible zoning, then there is no process to anybody.
Can you put your microphone
Yeah, pull your
down?
mic down.
Yeah, if we allow flexible zoning, then there is no process to get approved. You're automatically approved if you meet the requirement.
no.
No,
It'll go through the same planning process a normal subdivision would go through. Because the board will have to have, let's say if we're currently in the rural zone, there's a 2-acre zoning. We may say, okay, maybe we can get 2 houses on an acre or something along those lines. But then the rest of the land is going to have to be some common land in the end. So the main goal is to preserve that land in its natural state versus, because when you build a house, by the time you do your well radius and your septic system, pretty well impact an acre of land.
so
And
just to kind of address his comment though, the first sentence of the draft says, right now in the residential rural zone and rural zone, the planning board may approve reduced lot sizes. Those are the 2 districts that you were thinking about last time. So the question tonight is should we still be thinking about the residential, rural and rural zones for now?
I would think that would be the appropriate ones to do it with, to start with, if we even decide to go any further than that.
Yep. I agree. And then, in the future, if it, goes well, you could add more in the
Right.
long run.
And I think as part of this, we ought to do screening, we ought to do all kinds of things that would really make, even though that it's going to be a little more dense, you can still make it look attractive. And
Yeah,
that.
we'll get there. So the next thing that we left hanging that's a hole in that draft, was, so I have one town that allows it for 2 homes. A common threshold is 5 homes in order to be able to apply for this. What's your kind of gut feeling of what makes sense in Alton?
I ask
It's
a
the
question?
minimum, right? Which is,
In edgewise. Go ahead.
it's,
Hold on, Tara.
The use of the flexible zone that allows structures to be built more closely together generally.
Right.
With the overall intention from past experience was the total parcel area required doesn't change. You simply squeeze all the houses together and leave a bunch of open area. Is that?
that's correct, unless you decide to provide a bonus for certain things, and we're gonna get to that in the next question.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I wish the state was a little more flexible in their thing so we could add bonuses in for Blackwater, but they're not very good at that yet.
We probably shouldn't use the word squish, but yes, in principle, that's it.
Mhm.
All right, so just so I understand, so you're on number 2, basically on your bullet list. The question being, should flexible zoning, should there be a minimum size essentially before this?
Right, I'll tell you two arguments. Most towns use a number around 5 as the minimum, 5 dwelling units is the minimum size. I really like to see 2 be the minimum size. And the reason is, I hate to see a farmer or forest owner have to cut off a big piece of land to meet minimum lot size requirements when they're just trying to, build a house for a child or to pay the taxes. It takes land needlessly out of agriculture and forest, and in your case, out of lands that are important for scenic views.
Well,
That's my pitch for the number 2, but I'll tell you that 5 is a pretty common minimum.
Alton has taken lots of less than, I think, 45 acres now. You cannot have, and I think the rural zone only. Before, we used to have 2 dwelling units on a lot. And back, I'm going to say probably 30 years ago, that was taken away. So it's only 1 dwelling. And then a few years back, we had someone come on that had a family property that wanted to have 2. And I think that 45 acres is the threshold. Am I right there?
So
I think.
that ordinance is 45 acres or more on a lot situated to where you could subdivide in the future. I like Tara's idea of making this 2, because that will do away with that awkward language. It's terrible language, and it causes issues with the assessing office, like taxes. It not for the town, but it causes issues for the property owners.
Yeah, and I know that the thrust of when it was changed is they didn't, because a lot of times a property would be non-subdividable and people with two dwellings on it. And then it became an issue. Mom, dad, and the kids were battling or something, and they wanted to sell it off and they couldn't.
Right.
So that was the thrust of why they did that back then. My opinion is, if you allow it, that's their problem, nobody else's problem. They created it, so, but that's my opinion. Go ahead, Tara.
I don't, what are other people's thoughts on a minimum?
Yeah.
What's the minimum? What was the minimum put in place for? It's to reduce overdevelopment, right?
We're talking about the
No,
minimum
this is-
number.
this-
We're talking about the minimum number of homes in order to apply for a flexible zoning subdivision.
Right.
It wasn't to put more, it was to save some green space.
Right.
some unimpacted land. That was I think, plus to shorten roadways. Roads are so darn expensive to build where, back years ago, we didn't have any trouble meeting the minimum standards to have, what's that called, Jess? Where the housing is?
Frontage,
Huh?
frontage?
No, where the income, workforce housing, there we go.
Yes.
We had enough inventory that would create workforce housing. But now, since the market has changed so dramatically, workforce housing in this town has basically gone out the window. So this type of stuff would help us towards creating workforce housing, which we must allow for.
And we can always approve it through
Special exceptions.
special exemption.
Yeah.
So why change?
Well, the thing about it is the special exceptions you only can do that if it's a hardship, and you can't create your own hardship.
You can't do it as a special exception right now or variance.
No, because you can't create your own hardship.
Right, no, it's,
Amendments to change it?
It'll take a zoning amendment to
That's
change
what I'm
it.
saying, and we pretty much approve everything. Right, to your.
Yeah,
point,
but
just we put two.
That's why we're here right now.
That's why we're here to change the zoning for that thing. That way it won't have to come to you. It will come right to the planning board and it'll go through the normal process of planning.
so I'm a little bit concerned because this group has, this committee has consistently supported proposing flexible zoning to the planning board, and the question on the table tonight isn't, I didn't understand it to be whether to revisit that. I understood it to be to work through more of the details so we can get from the first draft to the second draft.
I think I was just addressing the detail of 5 acres, 2 acres. Right, and if it's already set at 5 acres and all the rest of the towns in New Hampshire are at 5 acres, not all, but I know enough of them, it seems to be the standard based on what she's saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
We are at 2.
I'm saying,
We are at 2 acre zoning currently.
okay, but
Well,
you misunderstood what I said. I said that a lot of towns say you can only apply for a cluster development if you're building 5 houses,
Okay,
at least 5 houses. We're not talking about acres.
all right, I missed the issue. I thought it was if you have a piece of property and you wanted to put a second house on it, you needed 2 acres for that.
See, sometimes
If that's not-
if you don't have 400 feet of frontage on that 10 acre parcel you just said, you can't create another lot unless you build a class 5 road and give it frontage. And that would not be feasible for a single lot. So this is just to alleviate and get something in. And I imagine we're going to end up with some type of screening process to set it in from the sides, in from the front, just so, it's when you drive down the street doesn't look like it's changed too much.
Fair enough.
Okay, so we're at the question, two units or 5 units to start this ball rolling? Jess likes 2.
I
Or
think
3 or 10, those
think
are
it should be
just the
5.
conversations.
I guess
I mean, sorry, I think it should be 2.
Okay, she had me going there for a minute.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, it's way too long of a day.
Okay, what's everybody think about two units?
I don't see a downside to 2.
And we've had a lot of requests, people calling, and inquiring, can I put 2 houses on a lot? That's why, so I'm going with, what the feedback from property owners or potential property owners. That's.
I have never liked that when we eliminated the 2 houses on a lot. I mean, I just think,
I
you
feel
know-
like if we do 5, like, what's the point of even doing anything? Because that's just too many, I think.
okay, what do people think about the 2? We good, 2?
With Mr. Shea, there's no downside to it.
Okay, 2 it is.
Jessica, following on that, what if it's separate lots?
What if it's separate lots?
Yeah, what if it's separate lots?
I
Because I hear you saying 2 on a lot makes sense, but what if it's separate lots?
So if somebody goes in and creates a subdivision of a whole bunch of 3/4 acre lots with a dwelling on each lot,
Will we,
saying, I guess that's where I'm going is, would we set that kind of a,
well, I think we would have to do some type of minimum size, like a mobile
Yeah,
home park,
we'll
1,000 square foot lots. You know, this would be somewhat along that mentality, I would think, but not, maybe not the 10,000 feet, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a minimum size, but I was still trying to get at the, if I wanna do a 5-lot subdivision, is that okay? If I wanna do a 2-lot subdivision rather than 2 homes on a lot, is that okay? Like, where's the threshold?
See, and by doing this, let's say they had a 10-acre lot and they wanted to do 5 lots on it. You wouldn't have to worry about the creation of a class 5 road. It would be an interior road, even though it would require them to build it to that class 5 spec. It still would be a closely held roadway to the association. They would maintain it. It should never become a part of the town, the inventory of roads, because I think that's one thing we should protect here in the town, because roads are expensive and they're expensive to maintain. And if you want to have one of these things and you live in it, you know, you have an association for it, like any other subdivision we do. There's an association, and whether there be maintenance fees or not, you know, would be applicable.
Yeah, I tend to be more supportive of this occurring on a single lot and an association, you know, maintain the lot,
Yep.
you know,
And it stays as a lot.
right. Oh,
Huh,
my position.
you guys have totally changed direction on that from a year ago.
We did.
Say that what?
There
She's-
were some members of this committee had a really bad feeling about multiple dwellings on a lot and shared utilities and
Oh, maybe we've had a time to digest.
no, that's all, it's all good. I just
Mr. Ara, did you just
that's-
mentioned that,
me by surprise. So you don't really want to see lot size averaging. You want to see these B developments all on one lot.
Tara, if you could hold on for a second.
yeah,
Pedro
my,
was trying
my
to say something.
question is, I believe you guided your question as to address 2 separate in distinctive lot. I'm assuming that owned by the same person to be developed. Isn't that?
No, if it's distinct lots, then it's not owned by the same person anymore after this development.
Or already, but if it's two lots separated by what? You said 2 separate lots. If somebody wants to put 2 houses in 2 separate lots,
They can do that today.
exactly. So that's my question. Why was that the question? I mean, if there are 2 separate lots, it's 2 individual lots. So that's why I'm kind of confused.
So because a lot size averaging or flexible zoning would allow, so I think I'm in a 3-acre district. It would, but I have 20 acres. It would let me sell somebody an acre in exchange for putting a conservation easement or some other restriction on 2 acres of mine. So it still comes out that 3 acres went with that lot, but they didn't have to buy a lot. I didn't have to give up 2 more acres of my field.
Yeah, and I don't think that's what we were discussing last year. We're discussing one lot.
And doing a
one
project
lot
on it.
With the multiple
Yeah.
homes on it, and it would depend on the number of homes would depend on how big the lot
Right.
was.
And that,
And
and
sort of how big your homes and how many you wanted to build.
Okay. I can easily make that tweak to the draft.
And also,
A
can that,
little bit different concept, but that's fine. We can do that.
and also can that be routed through maybe a table of dimensional regulations where you depict frontage as to specific as to the developed portion of it?
yeah, we'd have to apportion a certain square footage
Yeah.
to that
Linear
dwelling,
feet,
to
if
that
we're
dwelling
talking-
unit.
Yeah.
And then another one, they'd have to have a certain square footage
Yeah.
of, is that what you're getting at?
Well, I'm getting at on
The
that.
frontage.
Well, yeah, when you do the subdivision, instead of delineating on the basis of the whole square footage of lot,
Right.
delineated based on a specific front,
Frontage.
what would you like to see for frontage and
Yeah,
then.
because of
and then-
cul-de-sac, they'd have to be
exactly.
smaller
Ex-
frontages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that will actually help the linear, it will actually ease out to this flexible zoning as to instead of doing it based on linear dimensioning of the lots, doing it based on the whole, seeing as a whole, because then what if you don't comply with that thing that it comes through the zoning board, it has to become a variance because, and it goes back to proving hardship.
Right,
So-
right. We don't want to be able.
We usually write into these, I've got to rethink a few things if we're gonna go to multiple dwellings on a lot, but usually what you do is write some flexibility into the zoning ordinance that gives the planning board the ability to make those judgments. So they don't, it's just a way of, it's really just a way of giving flexibility to the planning board.
Yeah, we still need some guidelines. We're gonna still need some parameters that they need to stay within.
Right, and that's what we have in, in the framework of the draft. So then the next thing is gonna be even harder to get through, the issue of a density bonus. So if you want to encourage this kind of development, then you'd off the most common way to do it is to offer a density bonus, to say, well, if you could normally build 10 homes, maybe you can build 12 if you do this thing. And this thing is what? It might be conserving wetlands, it might be having smaller homes that are more affordable to people.
No matter what.
I think it was Scott that was bringing up energy conservation, and I did get the green light from New Hampshire Municipal Association for that, if you wanted to do that.
Well, one thing on that, Tara, is that here that there is some aspect of the built environment that is not controlled at municipal level, that is also controlled at state level. And we don't have jurisdiction or control on what the state will feel it is the best venue for them to perform.
Well, the state's the minimum guideline.
So I've just
Right?
because
I'll give you an example of why not. So we have a shoreline setback of 30 feet. The state shoreline setback is 50.
50.
So it's more restrictive in
Yeah,
that sense.
but ours
So,
predated that one.
Right, that
That's
30-foot setbacks from on older lots.
once upon a time, a long time ago.
and yes, there's always that. And just because we haven't met, I've worked with New Hampshire towns for 35 years, and I wrote one of the first shoreline ordinances in the state that was a basis for the first state shoreline one. So I'm pretty familiar with those requirements. And obviously state requirements are an additional layer that the planning board has to look at in any subdivision. But that's a good example of when you might want to allow people to kind of cluster the homes away from the shoreline instead of having that be undevelopable acreage.
In density options, as far as I was looking at, I would like to see if maybe we can do a bonus for if someone puts in solar panels. So you're mainly off the grid, but you can't be off the grid because the banks won't finance you if you're totally off the grid. So we got to have a wire going to you to begin with. So
But the thing is, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna need some metrics, because you have to be able to have a predictable process. So somebody knows, if they conserve this percentage of the property or this many acres, or the homes are this small, or so much of the energy is provided by solar panels, then they get X bonus. That's not going to be something that we can just give the planning board discretion over, because that would lead to different outcomes for different applicants.
So wouldn't some of the density bonuses include the land that is not being developed being taxed at a lower rate?
Oh, well, that's a whole other ball of wax that I don't want to go near. That's just so way above my pay grade.
Yeah.
Will you tell that to my listers in my town?
Because that was kind of my thoughts on the bonuses. There should be, the incentives should be there to do this. above and beyond, obviously, the sale of the individual structure.
Yeah, but in the ordinance, it has to be something that's within the zoning and planning power in order to, the bonus has to be something you can give in the zoning ordinance.
You know, in
And
these,
taxes aren't something you can give in the zoning ordinance.
we might have to deal with the word condominium in the rural zone as well, because if these are all on one shared lot, it's gonna kind of be a condominium basic setup,
Yeah, it's gonna
whether
happen.
they're attached, detached, or whatever the case may be. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's how if it's all in one lot, it's gotta be a condominium.
And if somebody's sitting on 20 acres, they could put 10 houses
Yeah, or 10
and
units.
put them all up against the lake.
Well,
the other 18.
this is not gonna be allowed in the Lake Shore residential zone. This is rural and residential rural.
But still, so they still put it at the best, they'd obviously put it at the best 10 spots.
Well, of
Okay,
course. I mean, that only makes sense. I would only want to live in the best part of the lot. I don't,
But
you know,
Guess my point is, you might be looking up on the mountain and seeing 10 houses on an 18-acre lot, but the 10 houses are sitting right on the edge of the road. You know, when you're looking at a cluster as you drive through, which kind of changes sort of the
well, do we have an elevation ordinance already or not?
bad example. You didn't, I forget.
Well,
that I
that's,
used
you
that
bring up
example.
a valid
There are other
point,
examples like that.
because
too.
Guilford, I know, struggled with that
Not
years
that
and
I'm
years
aware
ago.
Well, the only thing though, and this is what I've seen, and I have analyzed a couple of other rural areas, and we have a very generalized set of dimensional regulations, and now we are adding to that dimensional regulations the possibility of a high density neighborhood, which will impact usage, will impact the actual dimensional table. And we are not, I don't think we are still prepared to go there if we don't have something set on ground that says, this is where we depart from. We have, this is frontage, we don't even have lot coverage set forth. So somebody
We
can,
have lots coverage regulation.
I went through it. I didn't see anything that pertains to coverage as to how
Well,
much it can be covered.
I know it's in the RC zone, the coverage.
Well, just again, the master plan adopted by the planning board said to do this. So we're here to try to flesh out the details to bring back to the planning board, is my understanding.
I did my project at the center. I had to go to the ZBA for relief for lot coverage.
So let's just, I just want to kind of loop back and try and close some of these things as we're going. But so number 3, the density bonus that we were kind of talking about, in many ways, is the density bonus the fact that you can actually build this many dwellings on that small of a lot? Is that a bonus?
The density bonus would be, say, if you could build 10 houses with a conventional subdivision, a density bonus might be that you could build 12.
And that's why I wanted to throw in solar or something along those as a carrot to try to make that work better.
Right, that goes on to number 4, which is the, are there, natural resource protection as
it's-
a goal and.
But
Well, so number 3 is, do you want to talk about I tried to make it simple. Number 3 is, do you want to even talk about a density bonus? And number 4 is, okay, if you want to talk about a density bonus, what do you want to offer a bonus for? What are your goals that you want to encourage?
It's to keep as much of the land as possible undeveloped. So it'd be conservation.
that's really the meat of it. Yeah, because,
That's
you know,
part of it, yeah.
I've built a lot of houses, and one of the complaints people have around here, they say there's no neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. This would create a neighborhood
Or
scenario.
it's the design of the town.
Yeah, but
Well-
what we don't want is to give the opportunity to create that neighborhood area. And then we have a Christian center community of the likes of that. So in order to mitigate that, and this is from the point of enforcement, in order to mitigate that, the parameters have to be in place so that we can delineate, okay, this is what we have. And this is where you can get, this is how you can get your bonus. This is what we're gonna give you.
Clearly defined.
Yeah, it's very clearly defined. It's set, and then we can definitely Okay.
I'm not a
before we
fan
get-
of moving targets whatsoever because, you know, like I've said many times, when Jess gets a application, she goes down through it and she digs it to the applicant, they do it, and she gets a rebound on it, but it can't go on forever.
Forever.
So I want to, in the next 10 minutes, try to get, but I want to try to get enough direction to come back with some kind of working draft for you to chew on September 11th. So do you want to talk about it? Do you want to consider a bonus for smaller homes? Because we started out talking about it as kind of replacing the unwieldy workforce housing ordinance that you have.
So I guess I'm a little confused because you had given us a sample from Rhode Island.
Yep.
And I guess I was,
There you go, Pedro.
No, well,
I
well.
I kind of approached that as the guide and the outline. And when I was doing the reviewing and I guess I offered some feedback based on that reading. Was I off mark?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, way too complicated for Alton. It's an example I gave you because you had talked about, well, if you did smaller homes, like say 1,200 square feet, you'd want to probably think about some design guidelines so that it looks nice. And I'm working with a colleague on some other projects, and we're actually doing some cottage community ordinances. And I thought, and she actually did this with a really good consulting firm whose name I can't remember. So there's pieces of it I think are worth looking at, but not the whole thing. I think we can be a lot simpler than that. But in concept, do you still want to talk about a density bonus for smaller homes? Do you want to encourage?
I think the smaller
It's-
houses
Yeah.
would be an
It's-
option, you know. And
It's,
you know, if we got to go as big as 1,200, I was first that popped into my mind is 1,000 square feet.
yeah, I mean, you guys started out talking about this as a cottage colony without even offering that as possibly part of the ordinance as opposed to a density bonus. It's not a cottage colony, probably. It's a McMansion colony, right? I mean, you have to do something to make people build smaller homes or you're not going to have them.
Well, I'm not so sure of that. I think, you know, the smaller, the McMansion is well, for the very wealthy is probably alive and well, but for the average person, you know, they're gonna not have that big a house, I don't think, because the cost of developing it is just so much now.
Well, maybe we want to have enough of a density bonus that it really gives a big push toward the smaller homes. I'll come back with some kind of number. I mean, it's just going to be a rough draft for you to chew through. Just looking for some guidance for that. So, Scott, have you had any thoughts on how you deal with the energy? Would it be like if half the home was?
I would think, you know, around here, we could do the cottages with a 10-12 pitch because the solar pitch here at latitude 43 is a 10 pitch on a roof. That's what it is. So if we could have these all self-contained on a roof, I mean, because lighting loads on a house is almost disappeared. I mean, with LED lighting, I mean, you know, you might have, if you have 250 watts of lighting in a house, that might be about all you have, you know, but so it's not going to take a huge amount, you know, and people could have an inverter if they wished, or they could go backup battery with inverter, or just do, and I'm not so sure what's happening with the net metering system, because I know that's up for a change coming up on how it's working. So I'm not up to speed on how net metering will work in the future.
Just my personal opinion. I don't think we want to get into the business of telling people how they ought to power, heat and cool their homes.
Well, we wouldn't be telling them they have to. We'd be telling them if they construct the homes this way, they can build a couple more homes.
We don't mandate it, but if you want to use this type of program and get these bonuses, that is a way to do it.
And the intention is because we want to encourage
More
solar
development.
heating and cooling.
No, solar generating of power is
Yeah.
a help, you know? I have it on my laundromats and I generate about $600 worth of power a month. I have 18 kW on the roof. And you wouldn't need to have that. The average house is 7 kW or 8 maybe, but these could maybe be down to 4.
I can say that the new energy code is going to be mind-boggling for a lot of people, a lot of builders out there. It's really tightening up quite a bit. And I kind of agree. I don't think that we should be, in my mind, we're trying to create an affordable place to live, and you start adding on the solar panels and the electric heat pumps, and you may be losing sight of that affordability.
That's a valid concern.
And if,
But you're only creating it as a bonus. If we were to not, so you actually could still build the old way, put 10 houses instead of 12, or whatever it winds up being, without the bonus, and don't worry about the bonus. If we were to bag putting together any density bonus at all, what would be the process if they were to come in and say, hey, instead of 10, I really want to put 12 on, and I'll give you solar. I'll put solar on. They would
There'd be no path to that.
If we did, if we didn't offer it as a bonus, I don't think we could offer.
No, legally, I'd say legally, there's no path for that. Zoning boards do things that are not legal, but legally, there'd be no path to that.
I didn't realize we couldn't do that because we just did that with the lady that came in with her sister who wanted to turn one house into 2. I didn't realize that can't be illegal, right? We allow it. Or maybe it is illegal. Anyhow,
Well, if you
I don't
allowed
know.
it, it now is legal.
that was legal.
So
that would be
you
the- I
guys
guess
set
the-
precedents.
I'll have to read that case, see if I want to take advantage of it later.
Yeah. You know, that's,
Let's leave the density bonus until we hear back from Tower.
but the ZBA is a precedent setting entity.
Scott, that's not actually accurate. But let's not go down that path right now. That's not true.
I think outlining the goals is a great idea. I think, say these are our goals, but they're not requirements. They're the goals is to achieve more conservation area, more natural resource lands, perhaps, solar, wind energy. But I do think define the size of these structures. And I actually kind of liked the outline in that Rhode Island. It was 900 square foot footprint, and then you were allowed, I think, 50% at the second floor, as long as it was contained within the roof lines. So that keeps everything
Loft
low.
space, so to speak.
Was that?
Loft space,
Yeah,
so to
it
speak.
keeps everything low. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, but the thing with Rhode Island, and this is based on experience, and I developed one piece of land on that parameter, is that Rhode Island don't have any more land. And it's already super dense, especially in the downtown area, where now what they're trying to do is rezone with the purpose of making it commercial. Now, the problem that they have is that once they have commercial, all the things arise based on culture. So I think if we're gonna mitigate the zoning, we have to relate more to a dense area within the state that has the ability and they have the intent that we want to achieve with this zoning ordinance. Because we do have the resources. Alton has resources. Now we have to be able to control it to prevent the situations that are happening on other municipalities that didn't foresee if we don't control it now, where are we going to get with it? So, and based on what you just mentioned in regards to what Rhode Island is doing to mitigate other things, is that what they are doing is scaling back in the regulation they have set forth for what they are looking to see, because Rhode Island also have transparency regulations. So if you are developing a certain amount of land, those houses that you develop has to have upwards of 40% of transparency. And that's just, you're telling people to put more windows in the house with the purpose of creating a certain parameter of housing to meet the standard that they want. Do we want that in Alton is the question then.
Well, I think, I think that there's a certain price you got to pay to get the affordable housing. For that image of Alton, or
And I imagine the 20-foot side setback, like it's the Christian Conference Center, would probably stay in fact in place. Then you'd need to go to a cement siding or something along those lines. So we don't want to have happen again, what happened Easter Sunday 10-ish years ago. We just don't need that. But, and the cement siding is really a great siding.
Sarah, can one of the bonus be a reduced setback from the lots?
That's something that the planning board would be able to offer just because you're doing this kind of subdivision.
If it's a condominium,
Well, actually, because per code, you can build up to 5-foot setback per
Right.
code. So, and that can be a bonus. Instead of increasing the density of the neighborhood, we said, well, we will allow you to do this and that, which will allow you to create a space for a possible driveway for a 2-car garage, which is something that I've been seeing lately a lot.
we need to provide for a garage. I feel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I have a situation right now, Meadow Drive, where the individual wants to create a garage, but well, you're crossing your setback. And we cannot treat this individual as what they call grandfather, which is existing non-conforming, because it's a new structure within the lot.
You can't create a hardship.
Exactly. So that's
I've got to get onto my other meeting shortly. Jessica, can we talk tomorrow to see if there's any more direction from this meeting and whether you feel we should try to do something for the 11th or not?
We can do that. We can chat sometime in the morning. I do have that public hearing later on in the day, so I'm gonna have to dedicate the rest of my afternoon to prepare for that. But yes. I would love-
Morning's good. I'm free till 11:30, so.
She's gone.
All right, just what, you want me to call you in the morning? What particular time, or
You want to call it 9?
I will do that.
Great. All right.
Right.
I will talk to you then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
Have
Have
a
a
good
good rest of your meeting.
nice meeting you.
Should probably know this, but I don't. Do our existing zones have minimum square footages for the residents?
negative. No.
No, and I think that's what Pedro was getting at.
Exactly.
So if you don't have your original, right,
That's correct.
density written,
You have it.
how do you write up something that's
Something that is
modified
more-
when you don't have?
In this, well, I see where you're going with that,
Right.
but I think
Just,
as long as we just outline it properly,
I mean, we could
It should
do
be okay
it now
now.
with this one and with not having that in place. It's not like you couldn't, but I see
Yeah.
how it would. be
It's just that for me, you have somebody that is thinking 3 things at the same time. The first one is life safety.
Mhm.
Second one, building conformity. And the third one is gonna be expansion, which is always going to happen. People will always want to increase their living space, the living square footage. And if we don't have set on stone by creating a higher dense neighborhood, that will be a problem that will be uncontrollable
yeah,
thereafter.
well, that's a
So-
very, very good point. But I think that's easy to say, and I'm just saying, if you select this, the square footage you select is where you're at and where you're gonna be. There's, I mean, it just
Right.
make it part of the covenants, make it part of the recordings of everything that happens.
Well, that's another thing. We have to be careful crafting that, because then we don't want to infringe into the legal rights of the land to the ownership.
But the legal rights are being defined through this zoning ordinance.
correct.
And,
Yeah.
if they want a bigger house,
Move to a,
go buy a bigger house.
That's right.
And then open this.
Because
up
that was not
to
the-
be available to the next person.
because that bigger house was not the intent of this
Of
program.
this program.
Right.
I mean, I started off in a
You know?
1-bedroom apartment,
Yeah, then you had a 2-bedroom, then
I had a 2-bedroom.
then you bought a house, it's easy, yeah. Okay,
All right, so
well,
I'll
so-
talk to Tara some more
Yeah,
tomorrow.
I think, I'd like to keep going through this. It really is difficult to get a word in edgewise. with Tara.
Very difficult.
You know, everybody here was kind of doing the, she's gonna pause, she's gonna breathe.
Maybe we can give her a pause button. Flash pause.
She was trying to cram everything in. 5
Yeah,
minutes
and
ahead.
she's incredibly smart and knowledgeable. She really is. So when we come up with some crazy ideas and she's like, no. But so the density bonusing, I think I'm still kind of hung up on that. I'm not understanding of that. I don't get what the bonus is other than the fact that, hey, you get to build multiple dwellings on this lot.
I
Yeah.
feel like that's the bonus.
That is a bonus, absolutely.
That'll be the bonus.
And I think we were looking at a bonus over and above that bonus. And if it's
I
not
think it's just
necessary,
as
then we say
simple
no.
as-
And actually, I also see,
Yeah.
as he sees, I mean, if we start getting into the modernization of the building environment, then I believe we will lose sight into the affordability portion of it.
Yeah.
Because you start adding a layer up and layer up and layer of things that they can do, but that is also increasing in the cost and value of the actual building, which at the end of the day doesn't do what we want,
Yeah,
we
we
want this to
defeated the
do.
whole
The whole,
purpose.
exactly,
I
Yeah.
agree.
exactly.
I agree, because what I've seen, I think it could just be as simple as allowing 2 single-family homes on a lot
Is there any
and
aspect,
allowing for that sort of conservation type area.
is there any aspect to this that kind of mandates affordability?
Well, we definitely need to keep in mind workforce housing. We must by law provide for that.
I get that, but if we're gonna, somebody's gonna throw 10 houses on a lot where the prior was only 1, right? We're not saying we have any control over how they price.
No.
So
It's
this doesn't
the-
say like.
let the
a
market,
lot of-
the
a lot
market
of-
has to,
A lot of developments would say, hey, if you're gonna put up 10 houses, 8 of them can be whatever, 2 of them are gonna be affordable.
Right,
We're not
that's, we
doing
have
that.
that through our inclusionary zoning. We have an inclusionary zoning ordinance that takes into consideration,
Which
you
would
know,
force that.
how many of the homes are you selling at, a certain amount of money?
Not only that, and as Scott said, the
that
market will
already.
take care of that because you will have that. It's based, it's comp based and then offer and demand. And yes, we're gonna be offering something that is gonna be attractive, but what it is comparable to.
the thing about it is if you have 1,000 square foot house, you're not going to get $500,000 for it.
That's
It's going to be
correct.
proportionate.
A lot of
So we
towns-
keep the affordability by size, not by dollar.
Okay, but a lot of towns would say, hey, if you got 10 houses, 2 of them have to be at 120% of whatever number.
I'm
But
not
we're
in
is
favor.
that- we're not doing that?
Personally, I would like to let the market control that.
Dictate it.
I agree.
And,
Right.
and I think just like you said, I think the size is going to have the market control the affordability of this.
Yeah, remember with size, there is only so much you can do.
Right.
And the code actually delineates size. A bedroom can only be as small as 7 foot by 7 foot.
In 1,000
And
square foot house, probably gonna be a heat pump type of house anyway.
Exactly, exactly.
You
So
know,
yeah, there are many things that can be controlled just by controlling the size of the envelope. And I believe it will be a really good way to go, really good way to go.
So we are proposing an ordinance which would say to a prospective developer, you can put 12 parcels on this lot where normally you'd only be able to allow 10, but they can only be XY number of square feet each.
you're allowing for a bonus there. I think to back into this, we need to say, okay, you have 100 acres, there's 2 acre zoning on it. That could be 50 homes before you take out wetlands and roads and everything that has to come out of that. So let's say you end up with 40. Now that property, maybe we'll say instead of getting 40, maybe you can get 60 or 50.
50 based on the
50.
number.
So that's your bonus for doing this. And the bonus for the town is they don't see this as a roadway thing because the roads, I mean, we're putting a couple $1 million a year into roads here and we don't catch up.
Yeah.
You know? And so,
And that then back to it, the table of dimensional regulation will be able to actually, depending on how we manufacture that table or how we set up those dimensional regulations. And those are driven to frontage, side setbacks,
Yep.
front setbacks and rear setbacks.
So,
Um,
you know, areas of that is, okay, density, we want to discuss.
Mhm.
That will back us into this equation. Then we need to say, what do we want to have a minimum lot size per each dwelling unit?
Perfect.
Is it a half acre? Is it a quarter acre? We got to decide that. And so then frontage, that's the other one. On a cul-de-sac, you might have to go down to 50-foot frontage because they're going to go out like pieces of pie. So but again, we got to pick a number for frontage.
Yep.
And that's really the nuts and bolts of
Yeah.
the thing, really.
Yeah, I think the only part that I stalled on, sorry, in that was the acreage per dwelling, when really what it is the dwellings per acre, I think is the way we need to be looking at this. Because you might have at least the way I am seeing this, you might have a 4-acre lot. How many dwellings can you put on that lot?
A 4-acre lot,
On a
a 4-acre lot in the rural zone, I would say 2 plus maybe a bonus one there. But you've got to make sure that you take care of your wetlands and things of this nature. And out of that, so maybe you're going to say a 15,000 square foot lot per residence, just picking a number. You know, because we have those available downtown, you know, those smaller lots, we can, not that they're already created, so. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I think we may be losing sight a little bit. I mean, I think that you could get on a 4-acre lot. There's no reason why you couldn't squeeze in 6 dwellings into that.
Because he's factoring the main access roadway. He's factoring in any land appurtenance, wetlands, or any unconventional conditions.
Yeah, I'm saying just assuming
No.
that we don't have steep slope, we don't have wetlands on
Okay.
the property.
And that density that you're referring to is something we've got to decide.
Right.
So-
right.
If we have some ideas,
So I guess that's why, when you say that there's, you can have, to qualify for this program, you have to have a minimum of, I think we said, what, two dwelling units per acre? Is that?
we have one dwelling per 2-acre lot currently.
Right? So,
You're just talking about going from 1 to 2
okay,
at the lowest level.
at the minimum to qualify for the program, and I'm just going to call it a program for lack of a better term, but then what would the maximum be?
It was not that long ago that the rural zone did enjoy a 1-acre with 150 feet of frontage. That was 15 years ago, maybe it's even 20, how time flies, you know? But we stiffened it up back then to 2 acres with 200 feet of frontage. And I fought the 200 feet of frontage just only because of road cost, because road cost is just,
So
$1,000 a foot.
so we've got a
you
minimum
know?
2-acre lot, right? Currently,
Yep.
for a dwelling. And we're saying that in order to qualify this, you can put 2 dwellings on that 2-acre lot, as long as you meet these requirements of, maximum square footage or whatever, and conservation land and all of that. Am I close to
Well,
being?
yeah, I think you are, but I want to remember that we have 2-acre zoning currently. So you're talking about cutting that in half. So you're talking with 4 acres, you could have 4 houses, right?
Sure.
Where you normally could have 2. That doubles it up,
I thought a key point to this is they're all going to be on one lot. You're not,
right?
Right. You're not subdividing that lot.
Yeah, and they would most likely have a community water system, which would help. They probably will have a community septic system.
Yep.
To
Talking about that.
service these things. So, I think we'd say that every lot should have their own septic tank. That way we don't want to make sure that's, I'm really looking further into it because of septic.
So
guy, but-
that's gonna be kind of an association type of neighborhood? Or, and who is gonna own the roadway to
The
access?
association.
It's gonna be maintained by the homeowners.
And they'd have to have a maintenance agreement for maintenance fees.
Would you feel obligated or would it be necessary when these homes that are built to these standards are offered for sale, that there be a very specific spell out in the deed that you will never be allowed to do this, that, or the other thing?
There'll be that, it'll probably be deed restricted as well as
Right.
a condo doc.
But yeah,
Condo
that
docs.
was what I was
The
thinking of.
condo
It's
docs have to be
gonna-
approved by the Attorney General,
Yeah,
so.
that would be through the through the planning.
Yeah, there'd have to be filed covenants and.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We do that anyway. I mean, for a subdivision.
Okay.
So I guess just to recap here, density, square footage, frontage. What else did we say? That's about it.
Well, your side yard clearance to the.
Sideline, yep. Yep.
So
Well, he
setbacks.
said you can go 5 feet, but you know, if
For
one guy
code.
has tacos one night, the other part.
Yeah, I know.
next door
And
has to shut
the
his
whole
window.
idea behind that in the code was because the code understood that they cannot control where development are going to happen on a set parcel.
Right.
So being out of their control, then now we need to get parameters on life safety regulations, how we can safeguard the life of the individual occupying those dwellings.
And
and
these
that's how-
houses probably would most likely be set gable end facing the street
Mhm.
because they'd have to have the depth. They don't have the width,
That's
you
what,
know, and we got to provide for a garage or the 2-car might be, well, for the 20-foot line setback, it's gonna be a problem. So, or maybe drive around back, you know, you just don't know. I mean, but I think we definitely need to provide for garages because this is a garage type of world. I love mine.
yeah, no, and one of the things that I was brought into by the zoning board was that there is a need for garages in town. So if we don't foresee that, and that might be also a bonus, we can say, well, you can have this X amount of property size, 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Plus, if you do a 2-car garage, now you can increase that to as many as 2 buildings, or you can do maybe a townhouse. You can do 4 townhouses in a row
Right.
in that set lot.
And the ones I furnished before to the Bridgeton, Maine, they had some real small ones and they had a bank of garages set across the parking lot. So that was one thing they did. But then when they had I presume the 2-bedroom ones, because the small ones were probably, you know, maybe 18 by 30 or something like that. They were pretty small, but then they went to 2 bedrooms. They had like a garage and a half, you know?
I
So,
was just up there on Sunday.
oh, you saw it.
Yeah, we were trying to find it, but.
You didn't find it?
We didn't locate it. and-
It's on Route 117.
It's so
Okay.
well set back, you can't even
Right,
find.
that's,
Yeah.
make another road trip and go find, it's really kind of cute. They're pods of 10. And every one of those little roads off the main street.
So did anybody get a chance to read through that outline from Rhode Island?
I actually, I was looking for it as you mentioned it, but I didn't see it, but I
read
know
through
it
about
exactly
half of it
because.
before I read- I thought it was about Alton and I said, oh, this doesn't sound.
But you know, because I went through it and I was like, oh my God, this is just incredibly restrictive with the pitch of the roof. And, you know, I'm
Yeah.
surprised they didn't tell you what color you had to paint your front
Exactly,
door.
and exactly that, and like I said, that came out of because of how dense populated is Rhode Island, especially the city of Providence. And I actually did a major subdivision there where I have to partake with the planning department and make these houses about the max they can go were 20 foot wide by 40 feet long, so 800 square feet. And from there, we start developing things after one thing after the other. And when we hit the ball, we roll the ball, it just became a wow, this is a headache because now the municipality dictates your transparency requirements. It dictates a max height that you cannot go above. So now where you foresee, well, maybe we do 2 stories with 2 bedrooms in the top. Now you're restricted to that single story. And if whatever you do in the top is has to stay within the center gable portion of the roof because you don't have where to go with it. And so those are the things that want to make sure we don't get to that point, because then if it gets out of control, there is no stopping after it gets out of control. And that's when enforcement came on, and Rhode Island is very enforced, very, very enforced.
Yeah, but I thought they did maybe too restrictive, but a great outline
Yeah.
of what those restrictions are with the, 900 square foot footprint maximum of the building. 50% of the second floor can be used, but it has to be
There you
contained
go.
within the roof pitch. There are limited number of dormers, I think, that
That's
you're allowed
correct.
to have to make that habitable space in the second.
And
floor.
in the front, the front setback became a percentage based on the location of the front setback of the 100-foot adjacent houses
Yeah.
next to the development. So if your houses were 5 feet, 10 feet, and 5 feet, then you
It
got
makes it
7.5
tough.
feet. It makes it very, very tough.
You'll be like in Dallas, Texas, have an alleyway behind there, which everything is accessed from the back.
Yeah.
There's no parking on the
Well, and
street.
that's the funny thing is, there's one of the things that caught my eye in the reading of this is the word alley was used probably six,
7
seven
times.
times anyway in there. And it's
7
like,
times.
wait, we don't have alleys.
I know. Dallas, they do.
But I guess where I was going with that is I like the idea of the limiting of the footprint. And maybe that doesn't include a garage.
Right.
So maybe say the dwelling portion plus a garage.
Yep.
And limiting the height. They very cleverly limited the height. I'm not sure if we want to go with that kind of wording to limit it, but it was clever.
Well, we could do a single story with like an attic truss, a 10, 12 attic truss or something like that. And however tall that is,
Yep.
we can limit it.
Only
Because the
never
town
limit
has-
height to 30 or 35 feet.
35 is the town,
35.
unless you want to buy the
So-
town a new
so
ladder truck.
That could, potentially be almost a
Yeah, no
3-story.
kidding.
Yeah.
35 feet. You could
That's
squeeze a 3-story in, and I don't think that's the intent of this little
No, no.
development is to have something towering 35 feet in the air. So,
Right, a little square box.
Well, you don't want to have a square box because those are unattractive, unimaginable, but we want to have some character to it, some design review character. So it's an attractive looking project.
One of the things I've noticed frequently, maybe not frequently, but the town is sometimes approached to take over a private road. And once that interest is expressed, virtually every individual on the road is in favor of it for obvious reasons.
Very obvious
this-
reasons.
With this zone, make
Restrict.
it very clear that the town will never take over this road.
It can be spelled out just like that.
yeah, and I've seen that on documents that have passed through the planning board. So,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
so it can be done.
Yep.
Don't we have to, or I don't know, maybe we don't have to, but I think we often take I don't know what you call it, but the town takes a bond or something on the road. Even if.
Well,
You can do, no,
it's
you can do
completed.
that. And coming from Concord, I have seen that done many times. And also one of the things, and going to you, is Concord has they do impact fees,
Hush.
which are very, very pricey, very pricey.
We had
So we-
a proposal back 15-ish years ago for impact fees. They wanted $7,000 to add $7,000 to a home, or $7,200 to a home for an impact fee. That got shot down quite badly because, first of all, we're trying to achieve affordable housing here. And if you add $7,200 to that, do you realize how many people you're going to bounce out of home ownership? And then one of the members on the board had the audacity to say, the homeowner is not going to buy it, pay for it, the builder will. I says, oh, okay, great.
To Mr. Shea's question, right, that issue came up just recently in the last year. Where we had a town, a neighborhood on a private road. And they wanted to turn the road over to us. It hadn't been there long enough. There was a bond on it. Nobody had ever paid the bond. One of the lots on the road was the town. And the town wasn't going to pay. And there was another owner on that private road that wasn't willing to be part of the deal. He didn't want to pay. Right. And then we ended up saying, screw it, we'll just let the bond go away. So I am worried about the idea that if we put these private roads on these lots with
Clearly
potentially
marked
10,
them.
12, who's gonna pick up the tab if nobody wants to pay? Because you still have to get fire through it. You have to, all the other crap.
It's illegal. It'll be a legal document that is created.
Yep.
If you do not do it, you could lose your home as a result of it. Because you'd have to pay that. It's no different than, I have a friend that has a condominium in Miami. They all had a special assessment of $100,000. I went, "Bleh."
All right,
But-
so it's pretty much have to be laid out within like a condominium drafted set
It
of
is a
rules and
condominium.
governing. Yeah, it is a condominium.
Well, as long as it's taken into consideration, that's my. only piece.
It's no different than Samoset up there in Guilford. Nice waterfront subdivision. Those interior roads are all private.
Wasn't that what we're trying to avoid?
What, private roads?
Samus to come into.
Well,
all-
yeah, we're not looking for that. No, we don't have sewer. That's why that's not going to happen. Okay, what else, Jess?
I suggest that we move forward in this list in the memo.
Yep,
Just because we got to decide on what else we're going to be working on this year.
okay.
We gotta have to do that tonight. So I can start working on everything.
Well, one other thing that I had hoped for another zoning item would be a cabin colony. The reason I say that is that, the waterfront Winnipesaukee rentals, that they're just gone. There's just no place for anybody of just a normal traveler into our community can stay in our community. We don't have a hotel. We don't have a motel. And, we used to have all kinds of cabin colonies on the lake, but they've all fallen to McMansions. And so, I think these cabin colonies can be in the woods and still be just as good. And it's almost the same thing, but I do want to make sure that the cabin colony, it could be used, let's say, May through October. Then it must close, and then you can reopen it for the winter months for, let's say, December 15 through March 15. My main point here is not being able to use these cabin colonies and be able to claim residency, 6 months or less only for residency. That way, you're not going to have some real horrible setups that, they're in a cabin colony and then they're not heated properly or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I don't like to see campgrounds with year-round people in them. They don't belong there. It's because this campground's a campground, So anyway, that's my thoughts on a cabin colony, because it would be nice to be able to spur some other people, because maybe they'll step up and buy property in town or whatever that. Not that residential housing is a benefit to the town, because it's not. It's an expense to the town. But that's why we need to balance commercial. And Alton's very lucky. We have a third component. It's called Lake Winnipesaukee. And that's a huge savings to our tax base.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through the memo or do you?
Let's go through it. Yep, absolutely.
All right, so we had kind of went over this memo at our first meeting, but didn't really come to any conclusions. So number two is just pointing out the fact that section 326 and 331 do not refer to the stormwater management ordinance. That just must have gotten overlooked when that was put into place. So that, if you
That's
guys want me to
housekeeping.
look at that and sort of,
Yeah.
fill in some.
Why don't you come up with some
language.
language on that?
Yeah, massage that language in there.
Okay,
Junkyard.
so this whole section, number 3 is, I've already talked to town council on this, so this is highly suggested to add a new definition for junkyard and then amend the existing definitions for these other automotive uses. And actually that language comes from town council, so.
And really what this is doing is referring everything back to an RSA.
Yep.
So it's already allows that flexibility
Yep.
as things change.
And it's just, yeah, more clarification.
Okay,
So I would highly suggest that we do that, considering town council wants us to add something. So this section 4, number 4, section 410 and section 430, both of them don't have a description of the zone. So it just, things that I've seen and noticed and just kind of pointing out. So I don't know if, we want to tackle that this year or tackle some other things. I'm not sure where you guys want to go with that.
Can I make a suggestion
absolutely.
with the washout that just happened? I had a couple meetings with FEMA. And one thing they understand is that our documentation process for lakeshore residential or anything that is waterfront is substandard to their requirements. And they came up saying that anything that has to do within the proximities of the shoreline or any body of water shall be provided with a elevation certificate.
Oh,
So-
for flood,
And we,
you've struck a nerve with me on that.
oh,
I know my son lives down in Baxter Place and he bought his house. We built my house and that was that. Then he had to refinance it and then they had to have floodplain problems. Well, they had the floodplain higher than the top of the dam. And I have a problem with that, but I still say it every time and nothing happens about it. So we'll move on. But that's a problem. They got it.
it's everything, is driven insurance purposes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
no,
So I guess start over again. You're saying that the state is requiring this and therefore we should have something in our zoning to support it?
we should have something in our zoning that delineates what is our municipal requirement. Because even though there is some jurisdictional, the problem is arising out of a couple claims that were denied through FEMA during the current washouts. And when they call me, being pretty much green in the department and being bombarded with so many questions, and I did the research, and that's how they came back saying, well, you guys are substandard. Substandard to what? And that's the same thing. We don't have anything in black and white that can.
So by the sounds of it is we need to delineate, we already know what full lake is. We have that elevation. We probably need to find a flood stage elevation and everything needs to be built above that. Is that where you're going? with that?
That is one, and if not, this is not built like that, then it has to be built per code on flood zone as permitted by code. As there is a section for that allows to construction on.
Okay, I'm not
Those
aware of the
areas.
code of that, so.
Yeah. That's can give you the section number.
That's right.
That gets involved in you got to be a minimum of 12 inches above
That's correct.
floodplain and
Especially Kathy
things like
Lane.
that in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Oh,
So you're talking amending the floodplain development overlay district ordinance. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And I take exception with that because I feel it's inaccurate. But
No,
we can't fight the Army Corps.
That's why it's subject to discussion. And
Yep.
that's it.
Is that something that you want to add to this list? Or do we want to just continue going through this list?
Well, if we're gonna,
Let's go through the list and then, for
See
the
where
next
we're at.
meeting.
And we
I'll
have-
more
there-
background.
That's not a difficult one to tackle either, I don't think.
No,
It
no.
really
we have
is.
13 proposals here. We never like to go to the town meeting with more than 10. So we're probably gonna have to do some housekeeping here as it is, but
Okay.
All right, so describing the lakeshore residential and the residential zones is. Those are two. Then we're up to what, section 413?
So this is kind of, number 6, this is kind of a leftover from our master plan conversations. So although the Lakeshore Residential Zone, the minimum lot requirement is 33 square feet or 0.689 acres, it requires 10 acres for these items in the table that need a special exception. So the suggestion was to sort of decrease the 10-acre requirement.
I'm vehemently opposed to a 10-acre zoning requirement.
Because in order to do these things, you have to have at least 10 acres.
Can you help me to understand what things?
So in this table of uses,
Yeah,
in the Lakeshore Residential Zone, you need a special exception for this non-habitable structure, which is basically you're building a garage or a barn.
As the
As the
principal
principal building on the lot. The lodging house, bed and breakfast, recreation camp, like these uses, you have to have a minimum of 10 acres.
so excluding number 9, or the solar energy one. Don't the other ones make sense? Right, I mean. This, the point of the comment is you need to go for an exception to get approved. If you're gonna put in a lodging house on something smaller than 10 acres, right?
Yeah,
that not
you
make
need a special
sense?
exception for every, right,
To me, that
We
makes
need a
sense.
special exception for it anyway, don't we?
Yes.
right.
So, yeah.
So
that's
why are
what I'm
we,
trying to say.
why are we reinventing the wheel?
Well, that's the way we got it set up now, right? It's just, it's built to have.
There's not a 10-acre minimum in this ordinance. No,
There is for a special exception under section 413. It's a 10-acre requirement in order to do these following uses.
In order to be in order for the special exception to be granted by the Board of Adjustment, you have to meet those following criteria.
Right.
That's a minimum of 10 acres,
Right.
which means you could almost never put a lodging house or bed and breakfast there. 10 acres in the Lake Shore.
residential, if you could, it's gonna be expensive.
But what you're asking is to change that from 10 acres to 1.
But I didn't say one, I'm just saying,
What
To-
was it then? So if we don't keep 10, you can put up a lodging house on what size? I thought you just said like 33 square. I don't know what you just said.
We also need to remember that septic loading is gonna govern a lot of what happens, because if you can't get, let's say you have a 10-bedroom lodging house, it's 150 gallons per bedroom, so there's 1,500 gallons, and that lot may not support 1,500 gallons.
So why change the 10 acre? Okay, I'm with you. The argument for against changing the 10 just is basically just wondering what you said. What was the alternative?
Let's table that one.
so so if you're creating a new lot in the Lakeshore Residential Zone, the minimum lot size is 30,000 square feet.
Right, with access.
Yep.
I
It
know
does-
you wouldn't do this, but you're saying that then they could put a lodging house on the 30,000 square feet.
No.
because it wouldn't get septic
because-
approval.
Right, it currently, it's only
And
10
the well
acres.
radius would be,
So
they'd be
It was
fighting.
thrown out there to
So-
give this to ZAC
So if you look
to
at the,
decide.
yeah, so if you look at the criteria down at the bottom of that page, so
See it?
just imagine A is not there.
Okay.
So somebody shows up and wants to put this lodging house bed and breakfast on, can they meet the minimum 50-foot setback from any lot line? In 30,000 square foot lot? Probably not.
Or we put it right there to the center of the lot.
Yeah.
It's
Could
up
be
to
5 feet
10.
wide, but it's.
But at some point, less than 10 acres, they might be able to do.
Right.
it. Yeah.
So I think we just kind of, let's push past that one because we do have. a lot
Sounds
of ground
good.
to
Number
cover.
7.
All right, so I'm crossing that off my list. All right, next, shoreline protection overlay district. Oh, okay, so. Currently, the way the shoreline protection overlay district ordinance is written. It's almost as if. The towns are sort of passing it off, saying like, yep, this is in existence, it's an RSA, the state overlooks it. Then it's just the state that has that authority to enforce that. The town technically doesn't unless if you read this other section that says 483B municipal authority, this would be the only way that the town would be able to enforce that ordinance, the way it's written as it exists. So it could be written in a way like our other ordinances that sort of adopt what the state does. I mean, we can keep what the state requirements are. It just needs to just be sort of reworded a little bit.
And what's bad about leaving it in the state's hands?
They don't enforce.
The town, yeah, the town can't enforce anything. You're at the mercy of the state. If there's issues with stormwater or drainage or
And I
things like
bet
that.
Pedro can call up someone down at DES and get them fired up and get them moving on this. I know that for a fact.
Well, yeah, yes, I know. It's very sketchy. However, it will go with the jurisdictional authority that is bestowed upon the official. And I mean, I have no more power than the zoning board of selectmen.
Yeah, so that's AHJ. I see that all the time in my documents, the authority having jurisdiction. In
That's
this
correct.
case, it's the state.
Yeah.
And if that's great that they have the jurisdiction, the question is are they going to enact upon that? And what you're saying is maybe not. And
Maybe.
your phone call may or may not inspire them to act any more than mine.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And we have an example nowadays on Suncoast Valley Road that is an issue that is state created and they just want to encapsulate. Well, there is also a lot of other things, but it's a push. I don't want it. You take it. I don't want it. You take it.
So how do we empower Pedro to enforce this?
So I
Job
am
with
gonna
the state.
talk to town council about it, but I think you may be able to modify it in such a way like we're changing the those automotive uses, sort of.
Like the same thing, who oversees the 250-foot cutting back from the Great Pond? Who oversees that? Is that us or is that the state?
I believe that's stay through the
So I'm gonna look into this, but I believe it can be reworded to include some of this type of language.
If we could simplify it,
Yes.
that says code enforcement, it's his baby.
For the most part, it's gonna stay in place. We just, as it's introduced, the first paragraph or so, it needs to
Yeah.
be able to refer to the town, having that authority.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll pass this one right now, but you'll come back to us with, after you talked
I'll
with
look in it.
council?
Yeah, I'll work on that. Yep.
okay, shit, number 8, condominiums. Wow, here we go.
Okay, so this one actually has taken a different turn since initially looked at this. So. All right, so condominiums, condominium ownership, right? You can't restrict.
We can't discriminate by the
Yeah,
type of
you
ownership.
can't. So this came into play because there's a potential of someone wanting to come in and, build a self-storage facility and then condominiumize the
them, yep.
units. So this is kind of a two-part thing. So currently the self-storage facility definition only allows the leasing or the renting of units, which can't stay as that.
I have a suggestion. Call Guilford and get their ordinance.
So.
They have those units that are condo garages.
So this definition needs to change. It can't just say leased or rented. So.
Right.
So there's that. And then the existing condominium, section 329 is only allowing for new construction to be a multifamily, like multifamily residential use, which is, again, it's restricting the person's right to condominiumize their property.
Restricting it so they can't do it.
But yeah, so.
Well,
so
here
we
we're
need to
proposing
change-
something to do it, so we've
Yeah.
got to
So we need
keep our nose
to
clean.
change this, either add that in or remove some language that just restricts it to multifamily use.
Except
And-
we're
and-
just talking about, I mean, multifamily and the multifamily structure is more than one dwelling unit within a single structure.
Mhm.
But we're just talking about having individual freestanding dwelling units. So we kind of need to capture all of that.
That's referred to basically as a scattered lot subdivision.
Right, so we're getting rid of anything in here that seems remotely restrictive,
Yeah.
because it can't be.
And when did it change from 5 units to 6? Because I remember back
So
years ago,
We
we,
changed,
To go.
yeah, multifamily and like.
Yeah, so we talked about the efficiency of building,
right,
you know,
Yeah.
3 and 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes more sense.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, so this needs a lot of work.
yeah.
So that kind of came up after this got put together. So I definitely want to put section 329 as a yes,
Yeah,
and the
Gotta clean it up,
industrial
though.
facility definition as a
it's
yes.
cold in here.
We need to fix that. Let's see. Oh, so here's this next one, number 10. So number 10 was that new law that went into place that restricts towns from restricting site plans for religious uses. So last year, there was a bill that was submitted to modify this so that, you know, it didn't restrict towns, and it didn't pass.
So we can still put a church anywhere we want to
So
put it.
I feel like now that it didn't go back, it didn't get fixed. It's still the way it is. So I feel like it's, you know, up to you guys to decide, should we have it now changed so that it mimics the state?
We gotta be really careful on that one.
Yeah, I know, right. Because, you know, if another bill goes in and then it does change, now we've changed our ordinance.
Yeah.
In any event, if someone comes in, we have to abide by the state anyways. So this is just sort of becomes null and void.
Should we just
I
like
don't know if you
stay
want
with
to
the
kind of leave
state?
it.
Like we elected that on, what else was it that we were waiting on the state to do? Short-term
Yeah.
Yeah,
rentals. So but the state failed us.
they failed us.
So we can either leave it the way it is because we're gonna have to abide by the state anyways,
Yeah,
or change it so that things are proper and up to date.
All right, well, don't tell anybody on the zoning board of adjustment, but I was thinking that what if we just put an E under every one of these? And that way, at least there is some measure, some, you know, they got to pass the muster in order to
Yeah,
qualify
and
as a
there is,
church.
there is community input as well, because by making it E, that will create a public record that will invite the community to come in and participate, partake into
Yeah,
the
that's
the
probably a
whether
good
yea or
idea.
nay. I think that decision is a very smart one.
Because I know that there was, within the rest of the body of that RSA, there's all sorts of stuff defining what is religious use.
Right.
And that could easily be bastardized, you know, by somebody who's kind of skirting around the law a little bit.
So you
and
can't
there's
use
case
it-
law already in
That's-
town. I'm sorry, but for the Christian Conference Center, they, at one point, all the cottages there were under the church. In the town, they had a lawsuit back in the early mid-70s, and they said only the church items that are allowable are the administration building, the church, and the associated buildings that are truly that. All the residences are taxable. So,
So the RSA states no zoning ordinance or site plan review regulation shall prohibit, regulate, or restrict the use of land or structures primarily used for religious purposes. And then it goes on to state the things that can be or can have some oversight, which is the height, yard size, lot area, setbacks, open space, and building coverage. That's it. So you can't prohibit, regulate, or restrict.
Right, but who makes the determination whether that whatever they are proposing is actually meeting that definition of
Well, I'm sure
unrestricted?
they won't be able to skate away from life safety.
No. I believe, and that's why by doing it a special exception, it becomes a better path to it because
All those questions will be asked.
exactly.
Right, but I
Exactly.
guess where Jessica's going is, are we creating a roadblock or are we a speed bump, I guess is more appropriate for them to go through this process, and therefore are we discriminating?
In my opinion, I wouldn't put it as a special exception. I feel like that's just opening up a can of worms for people to take the town to court and say, look, you're making me go through these regulations where clearly it tells me here that you're not supposed to regulate me. Other than these things that can be looked at, which are looked at through the site plan
Yeah,
process.
and
That's just
I'm,
my opinion.
yeah, I know, and I'm playing
Yeah.
devil's advocate because, you know,
Okay.
to me, you know, I can walk up to you and say, yes, I am the religion of tree huggers.
Okay.
And you know, and therefore you can't put any regulations on me whatsoever. Thank you, sign my paperwork. Who's going to verify that I'm even a real religion or that I'm utilizing that space for religious purposes, primarily
I have an
place of
idea.
assembly?
Ask council.
Yeah.
I think they, you know, something they gotta,
No.
Yep.
And that's why I see the special exception as a way to moderate. And you know, not only that, we allow public input. And it's not a solely municipality jurisdictional view of, yes, just hand it to you, because it also can, as somebody can sue the municipality on the basis that you are discriminated against me. What makes you think the municipality cannot be sued on the basis that you don't have things that protect general welfare? Because now these people that are tree huggers are all in my backyard hugging my trees.
Well, anybody can sue anybody for anything.
Exactly. So
We're finding that out.
I learned that in business law 101.
so I guess, so if
Yeah.
we could just check with council, number one, are we overstepping our boundaries if we say, you know, this is
Exception.
Yep.
special exception?
Okay.
And number two, can we include perhaps that they must provide, there's got to be like some official certificate that says I'm truly am a church of the tree huggers or whatever?
You would think something like that
You
would
would
be
think
out
there'd
there.
be something. I mean, I know, you know, I've got a friend who's, you know, went online and got his, you know, pastor's, you know, just by paying $50.
Right.
I don't know.
It's like
Yeah.
So your marriage is questionable.
I need the car of your friend,
One
actually.
more thing to add, number three to that, Jess, maybe ask Guilford and Wolfboro what they've done on that, in that regard. Plagiarism is a wonderful way to go.
Hurt anybody.
We loved it in the fire station, I'll tell you that. All the SOGs and Ps and whatever. Yeah, okay, what do you have? Yes.
Okay, so, all right, so number 11. Bed and breakfast. So evidently when we were adopting all of the short-term rental and all of the myriad of changes that took place with all of those other definitions, and the fact that we didn't consider it to fall under that home business criteria. We have no use, no like hospitality use that allows less than three guests. So the suggestion was to change bed and breakfast from 3 to 1.
What about the short-term rentals now? Where's as a result of that? Lakeshore
Become
residential,
a short-term rental?
huh?
If you just have one guest coming in for a short term, would you still be considered a bed and breakfast?
I thought you had to have a manager
So,
living in the place or next door or something like that. we
so
said.
I talked to Tara about this. This was a suggestion from Tara to be able to capture having less than 3 people.
Doesn't seem like having less than 3 could be viewed negatively.
I mean, I don't have an issue with changing that to the 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm, I'm just,
I'm gonna agree with it.
yeah.
yeah.
We're talking, this was a conversation I had with her many moons ago. So, but that's pretty much was the gist of what took place.
Just trying to think of what the drawbacks would be, so.
And I'm gonna talk to her tomorrow anyways. So
Yep.
I'm gonna tentatively put this as a yes, and then,
Well, the actual thing with the bed and breakfast against the short-term rental is that bed and breakfasts are not limited to a specific amount of time period of occupation. The short terms are actually per ordinance, correct me if I'm wrong, they are only allowed for up to 6 months per calendar year.
Right,
Was that-
probably a day less than 6 months.
Exactly. So,
it's
so
for that
bed-
transient use.
yes, so bed and breakfast is not bound by that. It
Yeah.
can be all year round
Right,
without that, but. I
and
mean,
plus they serve breakfast in a, usually, hence the name bed and breakfast.
Feel ripped off if I only got that.
I know.
They definitely don't serve lunch or dinner.
Okay.
Okay,
All
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
So this next one, number 12. So this includes this amending the state's definitions of these childcare uses. So I had Robin start helping me go over this just to ensure that they're updated.
yeah, because you did this a couple of years ago or 3 years ago,
Yeah,
whenever it
kind
was,
of-
it was like,
kind
oh
of lump them all
my
together.
goodness.
Yeah, and so I think that was sort of the first, like phase 1 of trying to, make sure that these are all updated, but I did have someone come in and inquire about it, and I had mentioned, oh, these are definitions came from the state, and they're like, no, they don't. So they're outdated. So I'll take a look at that. I'll have Robin help me continue with this and see what we come up with for the next meeting.
Okay. And 13, it's there somewhere, I thought.
Okay, so number
Yeah.
13, this was something that John started working on it in October of last year. So I've had a couple different surveyors come into the office, and their issues are, so their clients want to do a lot line adjustment. After the lot line adjustment, their lot is still going to be non-conforming. It's still not going to have enough lot size, or it may not have enough frontage, street frontage or shoreline frontage, whatever. There's some criteria that's still lacking. So their point is, why do I have to come in and ask for a variance when nothing's gonna change with the variance? I can't change the lot size. I can't change the frontage.
They're just adding some land to it,
So
to
what
make it
they're-
less non-conforming.
Right, so their analogy is, why do we have to go to zoning? Just acts having to go to zoning altogether.
Well, and you heard me say this before, we have granted those not less non-conforming approvals. And I've done one of them without ever going to the ZBA before. I mean, it's gone on for a long time. I mean, so if you have an acre and it's 2 acre zoning and now you have an acre and 3/4, well, it's better than it was, but it's still what it is. It's less non-conforming, but it's still non-conforming.
The, I don't know what you'd call them, bylaws or the rules on the zoning board actually says less non-conforming. It doesn't say changing something to be conforming.
Conforming, less
One of the
non-conforming.
goals of that board is to make
So
everything less
that-
non-conforming.
That goes to show right there, if we kick it out, they're gonna approve it. And it's gonna come back.
Kind of, because it says that. It doesn't say it has to be conforming. It says just make it less non-conforming and the board will approve it.
And we shot a applicant out of here last year doing just that.
But we-
Right, they
being
have
a lot
to go
less-
and get the variance
Right.
first.
But we
Right.
also approved a number of them that were like that too. I remember.
Right.
a bunch.
So I did talk to town council about it. And, and then, he agrees that, that's a process that people would have to get the variance. So he acknowledges that. And he, mentioned he would hate to take that authority away from the ZBA, because that's the ZBA's authority to determine, whether they're gonna grant that variance or not. So by sort of modifying this language might take you guys out of the picture. And so that's really a discussion that maybe Pedro should have.
The thing about it is
ZBA at that point, and whether or not you guys are okay with this being changed and sort of taking you guys out of that loop, because you have
So
that authority.
I have an issue with that. I mean,
Yeah.
because you have a non-conforming lot. Any change you make to that lot, anything at all, it needs to go before the ZBA. They're the experts at determining, is it truly becoming less non-conforming? Or is it becoming more onerous in another way that we're not going to be aware of? So I think that it should always go to the various.
I don't have a
process.
problem with that. But I just want to know past history, and they're gonna have to deal with their own past history too. I mean, because they've allowed this,
But that's because the document says less non-conforming.
right?
And in fact, there was one example where a guy wanted to move, he was rebuilding part of his house, moved a garage from being 10, whatever, it was off the thing by like 10 feet to being off the requirement by 5 feet. So it was less conforming, but he had so much land over here where he could have put the garage. And nobody, we couldn't challenge that. And I guess, my
Can't
thought
you
was-
challenge that?
What's that?
Why couldn't you challenge that?
Because it said it becomes less non-conforming in the document we have, which is sort of our mandates or whatever. It says as long as it's less non-conforming.
No,
So
I
when we go through our
misunderstood
6
you.
Questions, I basically said, hey, and I asked the guy, I was like, if you're gonna do this, why wouldn't you just move it to the other 5 feet? He's like, I don't know. Because it was the engineer doing it for the whoever that was.
Those darn engineers.
But then we got to the 6 questions. I happened to, like, we go around the room and each takes one or whatever. Mine was, does this meet the thing of the zoning board's mandate? And I said, yeah, but only because it says less non-conforming and not changing something to being conforming, which is something we should address in the zoning board, actually, that language. Because that doesn't make a lot of sense either.
I mean, there's a whole ordinance about non-conformance, and that the town allows it as long as you go through that specific criteria.
But with that, and I'm gonna capitalize out of the information that you rendered to me, Jessica, when you consult with counsel in it. Counsel also, I remember you telling me that stated in the email is that by changing the lot line, by doing the lot line adjustment, it also renders changes in the legal description of the deed, because now it's not the same lot.
Right,
Because there is a change to the legalities of the lot,
exactly.
which
Basically made-
in
And
turn,
that's-
exactly.
Right,
Which in turn, what he did is actually, he did a lot line adjustment of a legal non-conforming use of a land. And he just make it less legal non-conforming, still legal non-conforming, but to meet his benefit. And at that point, going back, if he has enough on the other side, well, at this point, we need to actually take it through the board to see the entire picture of it and be able to have the town be able to have a better determination.
Seems like unless there's a strange set of circumstances, the approval of something that will make a lot less non-conforming would be clear cut and quickly granted. Is there much of a hardship to going through the application?
Just all the noticings you gotta do. It's an expense to it. That's probably the word.
Yeah,
That, yeah,
right.
it's, you gotta turn the crank.
But don't you also have to put together like an engineering plan depending upon what it is?
Only, so a surveyed plan is only required if you are,
Changing lot lines.
if you are submitting something and it has to do with a setback.
Which is why we have that. That's not cheap.
Yeah.
And most of the times those will involve a surveyor to do it.
Yeah,
And-
but,
Because-
and an example of that, and just going back to the same property on Drew, Meadow Drive, the lot is non-conforming. He has a septic that is across the street. At some point during time, it was a mobile home that changed location. Now they want to build like a garage, an attached garage to this mobile home. Because of my knowledge, I drive myself a lot with GIS. And I use the tool dimensioning tool. It's not inaccurate, but it's not 100% accurate. It has a 15% margin of error.
It's basically a
So-
tax map based
Exactly.
program.
Yeah, but in there you have measuring tools that you
Right,
can use,
right.
and he give you a really good proximity. And he was claiming he has 60 feet in between the property and the property line. What I measured was 21 feet. So there is an excess of 40 feet that I don't think the software is going to be that far off.
Right.
So it has to be guided through a process so that we can have that proper picture. And yes, a survey is needed, because once then that we allow as the town, as me in the building department allowed to build that on that lot, and it crossed to the other property boundary line, then how is the heat gonna come down? Where is it going to come down? Oh, that's it. You remember that's 3 frames. So, yeah, that's the only thing I have.
Well, continue to hound the Board of Selectmen for GIS, please, because it's an awesome tool and it can be used in a bazillion different ways.
Limitless,
Yeah. Because they've fought that over the years.
really.
Yeah.
So we're saying we'll continue with this as is.
Yeah. I mean, GIS is just the way to go. I mean,
Okay,
it's
can we go back to number 13?
sure can.
Yeah, I say don't mess with it.
Yeah,
Leave it the way it is.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I do think in the.
It's only the burden of an added cost to the applicant.
And I
It's
remember last year
Nothing more.
reaching out to New Hampshire Municipal Association for their, legal opinion as well. And they agreed that, a variance is the proper protocol.
Yeah,
And that's where it goes.
There are
That's
other
where it
towns,
goes now, right?
there are other local towns that
Yeah, so-
don't require that.
Yeah.
Jessica, is there a way to put a particular on somebody's list that we discussed the less conforming to try to change it to conforming for the zoning board?
Why do you want to do that?
Because I think it's kind of silly to sit there and look at something that looks ridiculous. And when you could have moved the thing another 4 or 5 feet, be done with it.
Well, but you have to think about what you just said, where that umbrella goes of conforming and non-conforming or less non-conforming. The area of a lot is a huge one, because that I think is used a lot.
Yeah.
Because people, have a 1 acre lot and they have a chance to buy a piece from their neighbor because they can do it, but they have to keep their lot conforming. And so, that's why the lot goes to there. That goes to the ZBA.
So the board could still approve that, is my point.
Yeah,
But the mandate says if it goes from non-conforming to less non-conforming, that our board will approve it, no matter what. That seems,
that's why I said take it away from you guys, but apparently
I
the
think- I
attorney
think-
thinks differently. So
Board may
I'll go with the
wanna review
attorney.
that. I think a de facto approval just because you went less non-conforming, I don't think that's right.
and I believe we'll need to actually go into the notion of what is actually less non-conforming, and how, and one example is Manchester Avenue, that house that was is in the Christian Center that was demolished and rebuilt.
Yep.
And the board decided to continue it. And then when we were on site, we figured out things were not as it seemed. They were making it less non-conforming because they were going to be increasing the setback distance from the neighboring property. And by that, it was a relief because now where there is a 3-foot separation, we're going to have 5-foot separation, plus we're going to have a 1-hour barrier. So it's less non-conforming. What are the parameters that I believe that it has to be seen as how we can safeguard life, life and safety pretty much.
There were houses in there that the water from this roof dripped on this roof and then to the ground. Honest to goodness, but those burnt down.
It was a good filtration system.
It had a 40, yeah, had a 40 Easter Sunday, 42 houses went.
Well, I actually, you make the comment when I visit you at your house with John.
Yeah,
I remember.
yeah.
All right, so I have one more amendment. It's not on my list. Again, something that came up since this was put together. So it's an addition of a proposed amendment. It's a follow-up from last year, the short-term rental. So the short-term rent, the public hearing for this, the public hearing notice should have been sent out to all property owners in zones to where there are 100 or less properties. So that's the residential, the recreational services zone.
Yeah.
So every owner in that zone should have received a notice of the public hearing.
Well, I think
Notifying
we've
them
got to
that
do
they-
that.
That this use, that the permitted uses were changing. And so since they didn't get notified, we need to sort of re-propose this amendment just in the recreational services zone. So the
And-
amendment would just consist of the table of uses.
What if they'll get turned down versus approved last year?
So
They'll throw a
with-
monkey
with
wrench at
that
it.
being said, we wouldn't be allowed to enforce this ordinance just in that zone until things get fixed.
Then we shall fix it.
So I get a question. Is that one of our zoning requirements about that notification for less than 100?
No,
That's state law, right?
it's state law, RSA
Say you're gonna add that to the list.
75-7.
Okay,
Yeah. So that did get overlooked. So that needs to get done properly. That's it.
the dinner
That's all I
bell.
got, unless you guys get anything else.
No, I hear
I
the
think
dinner
that's
bell.
plenty.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pulling up my calendar here.
Yep.
We have the next one for September the 11th. That's a day we all should take a moment.
And is that 6 PM? Is that the plan?
Well, Jess, tell us. 6 or 5?
Hold on a second here.
You have it for 6.
And
Yeah, we had it at 6.
yeah, I think we didn't discuss the 11th to see if we could come at 5. I think we only just talked about tonight.
Tonight, okay.
If we can do 5, that works.
For
We used to have
everybody.
A lot of people here. I mean, we're, no offense to who's here, but we used to have more people here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is unusual.
Yeah. 2 meetings in a row.
Yeah.
So do we want to put one out past the 11th? Because we usually like to have a couple ahead.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
considering how far behind we are, I think that's probably a good idea.
We decide on 5 or 6 on the 11th.
6 at this point.
It's okay.
Do we want to do 5?
Can we do
Can we
5:30?
do 5? Yeah, I mean, no, honestly, I mean,
Where are
it's
your
just that
ducks?
I'm so backed up with work that I'm here at 5:30 in the morning. So if we can do 5, I mean, I'll appreciate it that way.
You can
I
see
can.
your wife and kids.
Well, actually, depending.
Don't go there. I'm fine with 5.
We can do 5. It
Yes.
throws me off a little
That's
bit, but that's
okay.
okay. Keeps me on
If
my.
you guys are okay, I would appreciate it.
Okay, so 5 o'clock. All right. Let me look at the town calendar here.
How about the 25th for following that one? Or do you want to do one in a couple of weeks in a row to try to get back on track? I just don't want to make it so much that nobody wants to come.
25th will work.
1 second. See what the calendar dictates.
Well, we can go in the hiking room if need be. Might be warmer.
September. September 25th is open. Okay.
Okay, is that good for everybody?
That looks
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
It's at 5 or 6.
5.
So we're going to try and do these at 5.
That all right, everybody?
Yep.
Do we want to go out another one or we'll do it the next time? We'll go out one more.
See what our progress is.
Yeah.
Or do you want to reserve the room now?
Well, yeah.
That's not a bad
Because-
idea, actually.
Budget season is coming upon us. I don't have to do it anymore. One time there was the town administrator says no increases. So I brought in last year's budget. I says, will that work? He
There
goes,
is
"No."
already one that you have set up, yes, on Thursday, October 5th at 6. No, sorry, that's the zoning board of adjustment. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We'd have to look at
So-
either the 2nd of October or the 16th because
Yeah, the second, I mean, that only gives me 3 days to get work done
Yeah.
and get stuff to you guys.
Yep.
That-
So the
that's-
16th better? October?
Let's see. 16. That-
Because I don't know what to call the 9th anymore, what kind of holiday that is, but
Well, according to my phone, it's, I see. It's Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples' Day,
in Puerto Rican Friendship Day,
So
and
that
Puerto Rican
looks,
Friendship
that
Day, and
looks
Dean's
fine.
birthday.
October 16th at 5.
October 16th at 5.
Yep.
And then we'll just.
That good for everybody?
Yeah.
Because things should be wrapped up by then. That way, the amendments can go to town council to review. Then they come back and the ZAC committee will hand off the ordinances at the November meeting
To the planning board.
to the planning board, and then the planning board will schedule a public hearing, which is usually the December meeting. And then we'll go from there.
Okay. Enough on that. Next item, public input. Hearing none, I'll close public input.
And I-
Approval of
I
meeting
don't have
minutes,
your-
we don't
I
have those.
Your
Yeah,
minutes.
so we'll defer that.
Which is not a whole heck of a lot, because we didn't discuss much, but I will get those meeting minutes and tonight. For you guys.
Excuse me. Wow, that took a long time coming. Okay, any other discussion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All's in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks, Jess.
You're welcome.
How's that knee?